Okay, today we're talking about something pretty incredible. A medication that can literally bring someone back from the brink of death. I'm talking about naloxone. You've probably heard of it, right? It's this major player in the fight against the opioid crisis. But how does it actually work? I mean, think about it. How can one little spray up the nose completely reverse a fatal overdose? And do it in minutes. It sounds almost like science fiction, but it's not. And to get how it works, we gotta dive into the science behind it. It's fascinating, I promise. Right, so before we can really appreciate the solution, we have to get a handle on the problem itself. Let's start there. What is actually happening biologically inside someone's body during an opioid overdose? First off, an opioid overdose isn't just about someone being too high. It's way more specific and dangerous than that. It is a full-blown medical emergency. See, when opioids, we're talking things like heroin, fentanyl, even some prescription painkillers, when they flood your system, they just overwhelm your central nervous system. And the most critical part they hit, the brainstem. You know that little part of your brain that handles all the automatic stuff, like telling your lungs to breathe? An overdose basically just switches that command off. And this really gets to the two-sided nature of opioids, right? On one hand, they latch onto receptors in our brain, and that blocks pain signals and can cause a feeling of euphoria. That's why they work for pain, but it's also what makes them so addictive. But the flip side, the truly dangerous part, is what's called respiratory depression. It's a direct consequence of that brainstem effect we just talked about. A person's breathing just gets slower and slower and shallower until it stops. And that right there is what makes an overdose fatal. Okay, so if an overdose is like someone flipping the body's breathe switch to off, then the antidote has to be something that can run in and flip it back to on. And it has to do it super, super fast. And that is where our hero, naloxone, enters the story. Naloxone has one job, and one job only. And it is incredibly good at it. It's what's known as an opioid antagonist. Fancy term, but all it means is its entire purpose is to stop what opioids are doing and get that person breathing again. Simple as that. And you'll see it in a few different forms. I mean, in a hospital setting, you might see an injectable version. But for the rest of us, the most common forms are these super simple to use nasal sprays, like Narcan. The whole point is that they're designed so that pretty much anyone, you, me, a bystander, can use it and be a first responder in an emergency. No special medical degree required. All right, so how does it work so incredibly fast? Well, it all comes down to a chemical battle, like a microscopic tug of war, happening inside the brain for control of some very, very important real estate. Okay, so here's how that fight goes down. Imagine opioid receptors in your brain are like little keyholes or locks. Opioids are like keys that fit perfectly into those locks. They turn the lock, and that's what causes all their effects, the pain relief, the slowed breathing, all of it. Now along comes naloxone. Think of naloxone as a master key, but one with a much, much stronger magnetic pull. It has a higher affinity for those locks. It literally swoops in, violently kicks the opioid keys out of the keyholes, and shoves itself in. But, and this is the genius part, the naloxone key doesn't turn the lock. It just sits there, blocking it, so no other keys can get in. And just like that, it slams the brakes on the opioid's effects. The sciencey term for this is a competitive antagonist. It competes for that spot on the receptor, and it wins, hands down. The bouncer analogy is a good one, too. The opioid is trying to get into the club, but naloxone is the bigger, stronger bouncer that just stands in the doorway and says, nope, not today. It's just an incredibly powerful and elegant bit of chemistry. And how fast does all this happen? How fast does naloxone win this fight? The reversal can start in just 1 to 3 minutes. I mean, just stop and think about that. 1 to 3 minutes. In a situation where every single second is critical, that kind of speed is literally the difference between life and death. Okay, so we get the science, we get how it works. That's the what and the why. Now let's get to maybe the most important part of this whole explainer, the how. What do you actually do if you find yourself in a situation where you think someone is overdosing? First things first, you have to be able to recognize the signs. There's something experts call the opioid overdose triad. 3 key things to look for. 1. Are they unconscious or unresponsive? Can you wake them up by shaking them or shouting their name? 2, look at their pupils. Are they tiny, like the point of a pin? And 3, and this is the most critical one, listen to their breathing. Is it really slow or shallow? Or maybe you hear weird gurgling or snoring sounds. Any of those are major red flags. If you see those signs, the steps are actually pretty straightforward, and they're designed for anybody to be able to follow. So, step 1, try to get a response. If you can't, step 2 is immediate. Call 911. Get help on the way. Step 3, give them the naloxone. It's usually 1 spray in 1 nostril. Now, step 4, if you happen to be trained, you can do rescue breaths. Step 5, wait. Give it 2 or 3 minutes. If they're still not responding, you can give a second dose in the other nostril. Step 6, if and when their breathing comes back, you roll them onto their side. That's the recovery position. It helps keep their airway clear. And the last step, which is absolutely non-negotiable, is step 7. You stay with them. You do not leave until the paramedics arrive. And that last step is so important because giving someone naloxone, well, that's not the end of the emergency. In a lot of ways, it's just the beginning of the rescue. What happens in those moments right after they wake up is just as critical. Okay, so think about it. Naloxone just violently ripped all the opioids off those brain receptors. If a person is physically dependent on opioids, that action is going to throw them into immediate and pretty severe withdrawal. They might wake up really agitated, confused, sick. It's not a pleasant experience. But this quote here says it all. While that withdrawal feels terrible, it's not what's life-threatening. The overdose is. The number 1 absolute priority is saving their life. And here's the other huge reason why calling 911 is a must. See, naloxone is kind of a short-term hero. It only works for about 30 to 90 minutes. But a lot of opioids, especially the really powerful synthetic ones like fentanyl, can hang around in a person's system for hours. So you see the problem, right? You get this dangerous window of time where the life-saving naloxone can wear off, but the deadly opioid is still there, ready to take over again. The person could just slip right back into an overdose. So the big takeaway here is this. Naloxone buys you time. That's its job. It's a bridge, a temporary bridge to get that person to professional medical care. And that care isn't optional. It's essential for their survival. Okay, so we've seen how it works on a chemical, biological level. But the story of naloxone is so much bigger than that. When you zoom out and look at it from a public health standpoint, naloxone is more than just a drug. It's really a whole philosophy. And that philosophy is called harm reduction. It's a really practical approach. The core idea is to meet people where they are, without judgment, and just focus on reducing the negative consequences of drug use. It's about accepting the reality that drug use happens, and the number 1 goal is to keep people alive today so that they have a chance to get help and find recovery tomorrow. And this is exactly why there's this huge push happening to get naloxone into the hands of as many people as possible. You can now get it in a lot of pharmacies without a specific prescription for yourself. There are community groups that hand it out. First responders, police, firefighters, they all carry it now. And a lot of places have what are called Good Samaritan laws, which basically protect you if you step in and try to help someone. It's all about removing the barriers to saving a life. And really, that's what it all boils down to. Naloxone is this incredible tool that empowers everyday, ordinary people, bystanders, and turns them into first responders. It can take what would have been an absolute tragedy and turn it into a second chance at life. So that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? We have this thing that's incredibly safe. I mean, it does literally nothing to a person who doesn't have opioids in their system, and it's unbelievably effective at what it does. So what's stopping us from making naloxone a standard part of every single first aid kit, right next to the Band-Aids? It's something to think about, and it could totally change what it means for all of us to be prepared to save a life.